everyone. I'm Swapnil, a marketing strategist at The Marketers, and I'd like to welcome you all to the webinar. We'll be talking about marketing's role in driving the organization forward during these times. I hope you're all doing safe and well, and these are really difficult times for most of us, so I hope you're doing good. Quite a few people have registered with us today, and we'd like to give them another minute or so to join in. Hi again. So we're 4 months into 2020 and global disruption is at its peak right now. The economy, businesses, and purchasing decisions are all changing faster than ever before. And so are our strategies. Since COVID-19 was declared a global pandemic, a lot of content has been generated on the internet now and uh, around how the situation needs to be dealt with and how organizations can make certain changes to stay afloat. Companies have cut down on marketing spends, but we're not clear with which direction on that we need to take and how to keep the organization moving forward, or what exactly or where exactly do these marketing spends need to be cut down or reduced. In situations like these, marketing becomes an organization's savior to ensure that client and prospect relationships are strengthened, new prospects are engaged, and better content is created to drive engagement. A lot of you are B2B technology companies out here, and you will understand that uh, providing custom development or implementation services, solutions, or SaaS products, then definitely you can relate to all of this right now. Um, what we will be talking about during this webinar is we'll try and identify an ideal marketing strategy to deal with the pandemic, focus on customer engagement and awareness while providing support to the existing customers, choosing sustainable and cost-efficient marketing channels is what we'd like to add on to that. And achieving the perfect sales and marketing and leadership alignment is something that we'd focus on towards the end. So this is a 45-minute webinar. If you have any questions, you can post them in the question box that you can see towards your right. And we will take them up towards the end of the webinar. The host for today's webinar is Mr. Inak Pakanati. He holds almost 15 years of experience in B2B marketing and has built and scaled sales and marketing teams across multiple organizations. He has worked with Fortune 50 and Fortune 100 clientele and has also mentored and defined marketing strategies for startups and mid-sized companies. He is the CEO of this marketers, and I'm happy to share that we were recognized amongst the top advertising and marketing agencies in India in 2019. We also won the ITSMA Marketing Excellence Gold Award in 2019 for our ABM campaign. Some of the major organizations that we work with are SAP, Thomson Reuters, um, TeamViewer, iTelligence, and a lot of other implementation partners of SAP and ServiceNow. I will now hand over to Enoch to take this forward.
Hey, thanks a lot, Swapnil. Thanks everyone for taking time for this webinar. Hope all of you are doing well and staying safe and staying at home. We definitely are in a very critical, or I'd say unprecedented times. This is a word being used by everybody, but yeah, this is a time when I think it's kind of testing everyone's resolve and patience. So having said that, every organization is trying to run their business as usual, although most of the employees are working from home, coordinating from different places across the globe, working with their teams and partners and vendors, suppliers, and so on. So that has put a lot more pressure and a lot more stress in terms of coordinating and making sure the communication is extremely effective. Having said that, sales and marketing have always been critical functions of an organization. And obviously, every organization depends on sales to be able to generate new business. And when the market gets hit, or an economic impact like this happens, obviously sales and marketing take the first blow in terms of not being able to generate the required revenue, meet the required revenue goals, and obviously that trickles down into the rest of the organization. So from our experience and from what we are going through reports, to going through or working with our existing clients, understanding their own challenges and how they are shifting their priorities, what we've seen is that a lot of the industries, except I would say food and entertainment, especially food retail, food e-commerce, to online and digital entertainment, are two major channels that have been, or at least have survived this pandemic. And having said that, we are dealing, we work majorly with a lot of B2B organizations, especially technology organizations. And what we are seeing is that a lot of the projects, internally, especially where projects such as, that require a lot of additional spend or additional funding, or where organizations are working with other outsourcing firms to develop their products, are either putting their projects on hold, or if they are subscribing to SaaS-based products, they're most likely trying to hold or cancel contracts for the time being. So that is putting a lot of pressure on the marketers as well, because obviously the marketing teams are having to change their customer policies. They're having to change their the cancellation fees for their products and so on. So it is definitely having an impact. And from the research done by McKinsey, almost 50% of B2B organizations have put their existing projects on hold. And it's not just services, but also products as well. So that is across different countries, not just the European region, but across the US and across Asia Pacific and so on. We see the same trend happening. And so what's happening now because of this situation is that almost 86% of marketers are either delaying or reviewing their existing or current marketing activities. And this shift and this percentage has actually increased over almost 55% from the last 3 weeks. So if we are constantly, based on the current statistics of how COVID is kind of creating a negative impact, obviously there the number of cases are rising every day, and we don't see a light at the end of the tunnel, because we don't know when the lockdown is going to end, and when things are going to get back to normal, which obviously is not going to be anytime soon. So the pessimism, especially from marketers, to be able to drive certain marketing initiatives or spend on certain initiatives, is obviously reducing, and they're also trying to delay a lot of the planned activities that they wanted to do. And a lot of companies, especially the smaller or mid to small organizations, have actually reduced their overall spend in terms of the paid marketing campaigns they've been doing to bringing new hires on board, or putting together new initiative and things like that. So marketing has definitely taken a hit. So if you see here, from now to 3 weeks ago, a lot of the shift has happened, especially when it comes to how the marketers have changed their strategies, to how they're changing their employee team policies, how they're updating their own customer policies, especially when some a customer comes and says we need to put this project on hold, or we need to cancel the current contract, and we'll basically come back to you when situation gets better. So and we've seen it ourselves. We've actually faced the situation ourselves, and that is driving people to work more with their legal teams and also with their internal board and stakeholders to kind of identify what's the best approach and the best strategy to take. So while all of this happens, organizations still cannot just be stagnant. They still need to grow. They still have to make sure that we are generating some level of sales, or make sure that we're maintaining our existing customer relationships while reducing the internal or the external spend. So from that standpoint, what would be the practical solution? See, the practical solution is to make sure that we are optimizing the entire marketing function as a whole, and that brings us to the the aspect of how we can actually be able to drive marketing in different ways. So one of the things that we see is how you can the first focus will be on the short term, which means we're looking at how can marketing be able to increase the runway of the organization. How can we ensure that we are able to engage with existing customers? How can we improve the overall brand recognition? How do we make sure that we are showing empathy? How do we make sure that we're still being able to generate some cash flows? How do we make sure that we're readjusting and realigning our revenue targets? So if for a lot of organizations that have planned for certain revenue goals for the year, most of the organizations are now kind of scaling back and trying to see if they can even achieve what they've achieved in 2019. They're still good with that. So a lot of priorities are changing when it comes to how the sales and the marketing function kind of operate, how they can be very agile in terms of the in taking up more for less, and still being able to aim for the long term. So obviously the situation is not going to be long lasting, which is not going to go for years. So even if we're planning for, say, the next 6 or 12 months, what can you do after those 12 or 14 months is what really matters as well, and how you actually change your entire plan and strategy with respect to the overall marketing itself. So how do you plan and how do you change that strategy is what we're going to look at. So we're looking at a 4-pronged approach. The first one is how do you manage the current situation? How are you managing the now? So which focuses more on driving that resolve and resilience within the organization, and making sure that obviously marketers are able to support their employees, support customers, their suppliers, building up cash reserves, focusing on how they can cut down on spend on specific areas while still being efficient, how they can drive certain revenue response when their customers are itself, when they are spending less, and obviously they're, because they're spending less, at the same time they are impacted as well. So obviously your demand generation profiles to your target audience, all of that needs to take a certain shift. You need to understand your own customers now, understand their pain points, understand who your new customers should be, things like that. And you obviously also have to plan for a comeback. So the comeback in terms of how can you rethink your strategies. What you've been doing so far, obviously will not work. What you have, have done till date may not be efficient right now, or even in the near future. So how are you planning for the new normal? Making sure that you're also not just recovering from what you've lost, but also how you're able to make sure that you're able to plan for the future and keep the organization moving forward. How can you reimagine your brand? How can you make sure that you're staying ahead of competition? You're improve, or putting in strategies that are able to take the organization forward, help the organization to scale, and so on, and also help you to realign with the organization and the goals, and obviously stay ahead of your competition. And overall focused spending. So depending on how you're able to manage the current situation, it teaches you a lot in terms of how your spending can be further optimized. A lot of us most likely have been using a lot of food delivery apps. We've been used to eating out. We've been used to spending a lot of money, and now a lot of us realize that using food delivery or using takeouts or going to restaurants, obviously was very expensive, and we could actually make our own food, in a much healthier way, in a much shorter time. So this situation is teaching us a lot of things, and the same can be applied for the organization marketing as well. So how do you manage the current situation? So if we come to the first part of it, where we are focusing on supporting employees or customers and your suppliers, so your focus should kind of, the marketers, especially the marketing leadership, or if you're driving an organization and a marketing team, how do you focus on your employee wellness? How do you make sure that your employee morale, and at the same time, you might also be working with agencies, you might be working on with certain vendors. So certain organizations have vendors and suppliers and so on. So they'll be organizing events. They'll be working with companies that run ads to PR and things like that. So how do you make sure that you empathize with them? How are you making sure that if you're still cutting down on your spend with them, how do you make sure that the relationship still exists? And supporting them and making sure that you're able to work with them once the situation gets better. The second thing is, how do you empathize with your existing customers? So you need to understand your existing customers, like their motivations, their behavioral patterns, and so on. So their circumstances now are very different from what they were earlier. So you obviously have to make sure that you'll have to drive the messaging not just from your end, but from the leadership, so that you're empathizing with your existing customers. And if they come to you and say, hey, we're not in a position to pay, or we're not in a position to to run this program, or build a product, or things like that. So you still have to make sure that you're empathizing with your customers. So we've had our own set of challenges during the situation, and we had to basically renegotiate and relook at some of our contracts. We've come up with new ideas. We've come up with new ways of working with our customers. It could be discounts. It could be helping them to work on additional areas where that would be really helpful. Where it could be helpful for the long term in terms of, say, building a rebranding of their websites, to improving their content bank, putting out a lot of engaging messaging and running certain campaigns more that are focused more on awareness and engagement. So how do you empathize and realign your work with your customers is very important. The next thing is focusing on your marketing cash reserves. So focus, and this is extremely important because most likely you've had a certain budget that was allocated to you at the beginning of the year, and you might have set up certain budget for events and ads and PR and things like that, and even for your working with your agencies and so on. So how do you given the current situation and you have money in the bank, but how do you evaluate and make sure how you're using your cash reserves? For example, for organizations that have run over say 10,000 certain dollar value, Google and Facebook are already giving close to $300 million odd credits for different organizations so that they can continue running ads. A lot of the ad spend in terms of the actual cost per click has come down drastically, and then that's also because you now have less competition from your other competitors for the same set of keywords. And a lot of companies have actually reported that they're seeing a higher increase in terms of conversions and impressions, especially with a much lesser ad spend. So, which is a very good indicator, and it also helps you to see where your spend can be optimized and how you can make sure that the reserve that you currently have can help you extend your runway for the next 4 or 6 months. And you all obviously have to drive your revenue using very agile processes, which means your customers are obviously spending less, and which means that you have to now focus on very, very narrow, very small use cases, or your customer segments have become smaller. If you were targeting the hospitality industry, or if if you've been targeting travel and tourism, and certain industries that have actually taken a major impact, you may not be able to work with them right now. But if your product or service or solution can be tailored and customized for another industry that is most likely still not as impacted, say you might be going after pharma or medical devices, healthcare, or even food production and things, e-commerce and things like that. So depending on where education and so on. So if you're seeing your product or service or solution fit for that particular industry, and you can be agile to take certain decisions. And this again, I'll come to that point where we talk about alignment within the organization. So this require a lot of, again, stakeholder buy-in and a certain level of investment from within the organization to drive that level of messaging and branding. However, that will help you drive certain revenue, and you also using agile practices. Agile practices here mean using more of cost-efficient methods. How can you leverage channels that you've not used before? How can you leverage maybe creating virtual roundtables or virtual events, or how can you use video? How can you make sure, basically becoming a growth hacker, because a lot of marketers have a lot of money in their hands to spend for initiatives. They might not use all the possible channels or avenues to target their prospects or customers. But this is a great opportunity where you can actually experiment and see what's the best outreach channel for you to drive that level of revenue. So that's very important, and obviously understanding your new customer mindset. So your customer, even if it's a well-performing industry, your customer may not be as keen as they were before in terms of signing up a new deal or spending as much. So you will have to relook at how and what kind of messaging or what kind of value proposition can you bring to that particular customer. How can you make sure that you're showing certain empathy to them? We've signed contracts recently where we even offered to support that customer even before they even sign up with us. We out of goodwill, we said we will help you run certain campaigns. We'll help you to create content if you need any support from our end. So showing certain signs of empathy, showing goodwill to your prospects and customers will actually go a long way and help you, close those deals. So and the next thing is revamping your brand. So a lot of organizations we've seen have not focused a lot on their branding as such, which means they've used a lot of outbound outreach, basically investing a lot in their sales teams and inside sales teams, but not really focusing on their website, or not really focusing on building great content or a good branding. So even we've come across organizations that have 500,000 employees with almost startup size or websites that look like it's a small startup. And the problem there is you're not positioning the organization as big it is, as big as it is, or bigger than it currently is. So that should be your focus in terms of driving the branding and the new alignment. So having said that, how do you plan for the comeback, in the sense now things are going to get better? 4 months, 6 months down the line, things start getting back to normal. You will start seeing a lot of surge in terms of the again, the requirements will start coming in. We will have to start running events. We will have to have live events, and a lot of things will obviously have to start getting back to normal. But how will your marketing focus change? The first thing is you will have to focus completely from scratch. Basically, you cannot have the same strategy that you used in the past. Look at it as a clean slate. Look at it as a new world order, because a lot of things in terms of how a customer will now evaluate your proposal or evaluate your brand or your organization will definitely change, because now they're not just looking at what value can this company give me. They're also looking at, will this company be able to support me if a situation like this comes up again? Will I be able to work with this organization, for the long term? So what kind of impact will I have? So a lot of questions will now pop up. Obviously, our the marketing team and the sales team will also have new contracts in place that kind of take care of some of these things. However, your strategies in terms of how you're going to leverage social, how you're going to leverage your events, how you're going to leverage your content, how you're going to leverage your conversations that you have with your prospects, your press release, to again, spending across different platforms, whether you're doing inbound marketing or account-based marketing. The entire strategy requires a revamp, and that requires you to not just work with your own marketing team, but you'll have to work with every single person in the organization to see how they are impacted, how their customers are impacted, understand a lot of the feedback from your sales teams. You will have to talk to your own customers as to how they're impacted, how that will now change their decision-making process. If certain revenue, if they're getting impacted in terms of any revenue spend, or the kind of decision-making or hierarchical structures in the decision-making process, because a lot of times we try to go after CXOs or directors or VPs of different functions, depending on the solutions that our clients offer. The decision making and the structure could possibly change with this situation. A lot of manual effort could most likely go to using robotic processes. So how you realign your overall organization to your strategies make a lot of difference. Creating brand awareness is extremely important in a situation like this. If you've been reading reports, maybe from McKinsey or Gartner or Forbes or any of the other the larger research firms, you will see that almost more than 60 to 70% of the organizations now, they are trying to focus completely on digital, which means If your inside sales teams have been doing a lot of emailing and trying to do a lot of hard sell, it's most likely not going to work, because now your customers are going to be digitally savvy. Even in industries where digital was, it was a distant term where they've never really were a fan of it, but now they're forced to embrace digital, which means unless you have a very strong presence, establish your brand value, your messaging, and your core competency, through great content, through thought leadership, through driving different, obviously different initiatives on digital, you would not be able to get the kind of customers that you want. And obviously the final point is redefining loyalty. You want to obviously keep your existing customers, which means how your customers perceive you, how you've been able to support them through the current situation, and how you have realigned your entire patterns of work and your account mining strategies to, obviously going deeper into your existing accounts and being able to leverage your existing contacts to drive additional business from your existing accounts is going to really define how your revenues are going to look like, because 60% of your revenue should be driven from your existing accounts on an annual basis, possibly about 40% from net new. So that 60% has to come from your existing accounts. How do you maintain your existing customers and drive loyalty is going to define everything. So yeah, so like I said, you have to obviously plan for the new normal and make sure that you're completely focused on how you're rebranding. And focus spending, like I said, the way we are, or the current situation obviously teaches us a lot of things. At the same time, you'll have to look at how or where your spend is going to be. So some of you might be working with various organizations. You'll be working with basically agencies, and so on. So you'll have to look at how you can cut down your marketing spend. So this marketing spend again focuses on you'll have to look at your marketing programs and also look at what your cost centers are, and then look at how each of these marketing programs that you're running and your cost centers are actually supporting the your customer journey or influencing the business revenue. Now, once you're able to consider those programs and you kind of understand what is the marketing value versus those programs that are just supporting the marketing function, you then have to take a call in terms of how you can actually optimize that spend. So if you look at marketing, the optimization or the cost optimization matrix from this is from Gartner, you have different areas that you can actually look at in terms of cost optimization. So this can be working with agencies. It could be your media spend, your marketing technologies that you use, basically your entire tech stack, your CRMs, to your marketing automation tools, your ad tools, and social media tools, and things like that. So you'll have to relook at those, look at how you can look at your operations itself, the marketing operations, how you can reduce your digital commerce, basically your ad spend on various channels. Where can you optimize your campaigns? How can you optimize obviously your marketing analytics? Can you do with can you do with basic reports, or do you need tools and processes that will give you extensive deep reports? And obviously what kind of projects you're running within the organization, or certain new initiatives, and how do you want to divest or basically put them on hold. So you'll have to take a call depending on the initiatives you're taking, the tools that you're using, and the kind of agencies you work with. So if we come to agencies, look at how you can renegotiate their contracts. Look at how you can optimize your work with them. So to be honest, and from our own standpoint, being an agency ourselves, like I said earlier, we've been proactive in terms of giving discounts to some of our clients. Wherever we have retainer projects going on, where we've signed up for the long term, and we've completely realigned. We've taken a completely 360-degree shift in terms of how our marketing strategy needs to now align to the new normal. How we need to focus on, basically changing our entire focus to how we can now drive empathy, to building our content repositories, to driving awareness and engagement with prospects, doing our industry specific research and situational research as to how, and for all our clients, and basically to help them, to support them, at the same time driving new initiatives that will help them to engage with their prospects better. So you'll have to see, how your agency is actually helping you with those kind of initiatives, and then set certain KPIs. You'll obviously have to set certain goals and metrics to measure them, and and then strengthen that relationship. The second thing, again, in terms of the marketing technologies and tools itself, we've seen a few clients that who were using certain very expensive tools. We've recently signed up, and they've asked if we could actually stop the contracts for those tools, because that was a humongous spend in terms of just the tool implementation. So we had to be open for that, and obviously, as an organization, if you are investing in tools like that, you'll have to look at what is the value you're driving from that tool. If you're not using that tool more than 50% of its actual capability, then you will have to look at how you can actually cut that spend and use that cash for some other initiatives. So that is extremely important. Same thing with your ads as well. So if you've been used to running ads, and if the ads actually make sense for you, in the sense if you're a B2C organization, or if you're even a B2B company that requires, say, if you're into app develop, if you have an app and you need to drive app downloads, or if you need to, if you're an education company that requires people to sign up for your platform. So things like that, obviously, you have to spend because you need to drive new users, and obviously drive revenue from there. And given that the cost for ads has actually come down in terms of the cost per click and impressions, you can actually take advantage of the situation. But you need to take advantage of the situation if you know that ads will actually work for you, depending on the industry that you're targeting and the solution positioning that you're doing. Similarly, your overall campaigns as well. So if you're running different campaigns, you could be running different email campaigns. You could be running promotional campaigns, and so on and so forth. And now, given that we're not able to do any, since you will not be able to do any events, you'll have to look at how can you optimize that to drive maybe webinars, or and completely refrain from doing a direct marketing push, but focus more on driving awareness, and conversion. So conversations. So look at how you can minimize the waste spend and focus on how you can optimize that spend, and at the same time being extremely efficient in what you do. So how do you arrive at that alignment within the organization? So like I said earlier, a lot of decisions have to be taken together. Marketing obviously cannot take a lot of those decisions, and also marketing has to stand up for things that they need, because say if the marketing team requires certain access to tools that they cannot live without, or they have a huge dependency on, if the organization decides to stop that spend, then you will have to really look at what other spend can you reduce and keep that particular tool or that particular campaign running. So that's one. And the next thing is, you will have to work, like I said, work with every single function in your team. You will have to talk to your HR, you'll have to talk to your project managers, to your internal IT teams, you'll have to discuss with your finance teams, to understand where the organization currently stands, how can you change the goals of the organization, how can you realign the goals, and then take your plan to obviously the stakeholders, get their buy-in in terms of how you want to reposition the organization, what kind of rebranding exercise do you want to take up to basically how you want to uh, change your industry or your prospect or target prospect focus. So if you're targeting a particular industry all the whole time, and now you see that unless you change your geography or countries that have not been affected by COVID, or companies that are recovering faster from COVID and businesses going back to normal, and industries that are basically not heavily impacted or recovering fast, how can you change your entire focus to such geographies and industries and realign the overall marketing strategy to target those countries and obviously drive revenues from there. So as long as the organization is able to expand, as long as the organization is able to drive revenue, and as long as marketing is able to support it through, again, close alignment, and that's what truly matters. And the next thing is you'll also have to focus on in your internal training programs. So marketing leaders especially, or even the leadership and the management have to focus on upskilling teams, focus on how you can help your teams get better, because a lot of technologies are going to change, a lot of things will be automated, given that most of the things that were manual process dependent most likely might go into intelligent process automation or robotic process automation. So how can you make sure that your employees are skilled enough to be able to take up such tasks and functions? Obviously, you'll also have to look at how you can optimize your resources, driving or improving your sales resources. If your sales teams are not do not have much on their plate, or if anyone in the organization is not doesn't have much to do, then how can you make sure that they are contributing to improve with basically with your marketing campaigns, or creating some new content, or supporting with any other new initiative. So optimizing resources is another key aspect of this. So that brings us almost to the end of the webinar. So some of the things that obviously we'll have to keep in mind is how, given the current situation, and we've been doing webinars every month almost, and in the last couple of weeks, I've spoken to a lot of people who've actually reached out to me to ask, should we sell? Is this a good time to actually sell and sell directly? Now, it's a yes and a no answer. Yes, because most of the prospects are actually now working from home. They have access to email, they have access to all the digital platforms, and they have, most likely they'll have more time on their hands. It depends on what role they play, but there's a high likelihood that your email will reach them. Now, the no, because you might not be showing empathy in your messaging, and your team most likely is just trying to push a sales message, asking for a call or a sign up, or putting out too much information that someone's not able to digest that. That's number one. Number two, say if you're targeting retail, or if you've been targeting automotive, or certain other industries that have shut down their operations, even say, for example, travel and tourism, hospitality, cinemas, and so on. A lot of these organizations have put their employees on unpaid leaves or furloughs, where the employees actually not working for the time being, and they'll obviously start working once situation goes back to normal. But sending out emails to them will not work, because obviously they're not going to check your emails, nor would they be in a position to respond. So you'll have to figure out what's the best way to run your campaigns. And again, going back to what I was saying earlier, focus on geographies, focus on industries, focus on functions and prospects that most likely will be interested in speaking with you. Focus on driving a conversation. Don't try to focus on selling to them. Understand their pain points, understand how the market situation has actually affected their industry, and how you will be able to actually, add value to them. And that's where you'll be able to, bring in better personalization, and that will help you drive, better outcomes. And again, given that LinkedIn is one of the main channels for a lot of people, using emails or using messages, it's almost become a go-to platform to just send bulk type of messages. I would recommend using more of an account-based approach. Focus on which accounts you want to go after, which industries you want to go after, pick the audience you want to go after, and then personalize your message for them specifically. Engage with them, drive a conversation from there, see how you can then nurture and convert those prospects. So that's extremely important for you to make sure that you're driving a sustainable long-term relationship with those prospects. At the same time, whenever they're ready, they're obviously willing to talk to you and bring in a project. And most importantly, one thing I cannot stress enough is the importance on optimizing your spend. While it is coming from an agency like ours, we are dependent on other organizations to work with us. It is very important that everyone stays in the runway. Everyone is able to sustain themselves. Everyone is able to support each other, and at the same time, making sure that your organization is moving forward while using the most important and minimal resources is the need of the hour. And how you're, based on what your positioning is and how you have structured your own marketing campaign or marketing overall, your team and structure, you will then have to realign the overall strategy and the spend, and basically take it forward from there. So having said that, that brings me to the end of this presentation and this webinar. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, and I'll be happy to take any questions if you have, and we'll be you can actually post them on the questions tab that you see on the right hand side of your screen. So I see one question, for a B2B SaaS product, which platform would be best to promote using ads? For B2B SaaS, again, depending on what solution I'm not sure what solution or your product offers, or what I would say focus on doing more of segmented, like industry specific or account specific marketing or account-based marketing. Look at how, if your target audience is actually active on that platform. For example, if you're targeting LinkedIn, or even if you're using programmatic advertisements, like say using Rollworks, in that case, you will have to first figure out who your target audience is, build your prospect list, and then drive your specific campaign so that you're able to serve ads to them directly. On LinkedIn, again, we've seen that there's a slightly there's also their cost per clicks have also reduced, which is obviously a good advantage to take off. I mean, you can take that advantage. And the one thing that you'll have to do is to first evaluate, run test campaigns, and see which one is actually working for you. And then from there, take it, test and measure the success from there, and build upon it. I have one more question. We are a major IT service player. What should be our approach for new business? So we are seeing, across industries, the amount of inquiries have come down, even for. But we've also seen companies that have closed some major deals over the last couple of weeks, some of our own clients, and companies that I know personally, they have been able to close some major deals in the e-commerce, food production, some of these industries. However, like I said earlier, you will have to use a very focused approach. The traditional inside sales, outbound type of approach will not work anymore. You will have to make sure that you are first figuring out what are the companies and the accounts and the segments or industries that you want to go after. Understand what are their challenges or pain points, and how you and basically mapping your services and solutions to their specific pain points and challenges, customizing your messaging, building relevant content and credibility. So credibility, I mean, building certain case studies or credibility to drive personalized campaigns to those industries, and start with initially building up a conversation rather than pushing a sales message, and obviously start generating interest and conversations from there, and build an opportunity. So that would be my advice. And you'll also obviously also have to focus on a lot of inbound, because as the IT services organization, inbound is extremely important, because most of your prospects are active online, and then are searching possibly to get certain questions answered. So if you're able to rank, and if your content is good enough and driving thought leadership, you'll definitely be able to drive a new business even in this situation. So one more question. We are an online healthcare aggregator. We changed the content according to the current situation, but our customers are more afraid to buy anything online. Yeah, so right now, customer priorities are obviously changing, and you will have to change your business model accordingly. And if that cannot be done, the only option right now is to see how you can connect with your customers directly and understand what is it that they're expecting. Most likely, running a customer survey will help you understand challenges and realign your overall business, because just the content or the because even if someone wants to go online and make a purchase, they don't even know if that will be delivered to them given the current situation. So that obviously puts people at a in a dual mind, where they will not be able to take a quick decision or a purchase decision right away. So look at how you can run your customer surveys, understand your customer pulse, and from there make the required changes to the business model itself. Our SaaS product caters to agencies much like these marketers. So if they're losing business, so do we. How can we ensure giving them value through any business till the pandemic ends and back to business? So yeah, so you'll have to realign how your product will actually, you might have to do agency partnerships. You'll also have to see how you can give certain deferred payment options to your clients at the same time, or maybe give some discounts during this time, and see how they can reimburse you for basically the payments over a period of time once they start recovering. But you have to show value that you're able to support them during this time, and that your product can actually drive a lot of value for them. So that's what will help us sustain. We have been using certain products that have been priced really well, and they've also been very proactive in terms of coming up with discounts and giving additional options and features. We have also had clients, or we've used tools that have been extremely rigid without giving us any form of leverage, and we also have had, or we have been forced by our clients to reach out to them to cancel those contracts. So it completely depends on how flexible you are and how agile you are to be malleable and flexible with the current situation. So I think one question is, what is ABM and how is it effective during this period? So like I said, account-based marketing is a very broad subject, but if I have to put it in extremely simple words, if your organization is providing services or solutions to specific industries, and you know what value you can bring to that particular industry, or able to map your value proposition to the industry or those specific accounts. So, for example, if you want to do a very personalized outreach, you can still do a 1:1 outreach to a few set of major accounts, but you'll have to put in a lot of time, effort, and cost into understanding those accounts, their pain points, understanding who your decision makers or influencers would be, building your the overall content to your campaigns, to getting the right tool set or the technologies to support your entire campaign, and being extremely personalized for those accounts. Or if you're doing an industry-focused ABM campaign, then you will say, for example, pick healthcare providers as one segment, and you will do a deep dive in terms of who are the, say, take about 100 healthcare providers in the US, or top 100. And then for those top 100 healthcare providers, what is the value you can bring? What kind of challenges do they currently have? So if you're, say, for example, you're trying to improve physician experience within hospitals. So how can you improve physician experience? What are the challenges faced by a physician within a hospital setting? So you kind of build the required content to support your claim or your the pitch that you're going to take to them. Build certain credibility. So show, if you have any case studies, how you've helped another healthcare provider solve a similar challenge. Come up with a lot of thought leadership content. So it could be industry. It could be an industry report saying how healthcare organizations have to improve physician experience and how technology would help them do that. So you might talk about medical devices or integrations, or basically integrating with EMR systems and stuff like that. So the idea is how you're able to customize and personalize your messaging, and using a multi-channel approach. So you might use email, LinkedIn, targeted ads, or IP-based ads. You might in this situation like this, you might want to do a virtual roundtable. In a normal situation, we would set up actual roundtables, innovation days. We might be sending direct mailers, and so on. So anything, even meet, connect, and greet at events, giving speaker slots. So anything that can help you build a relationship with a prospect and drive an opportunity is what you do in ABM, and it's a very personalized type of approach. So I hope I was able to answer your question. All right, so yeah, I think we are more or less at the end of the session. Thank you once again, everyone, for taking time for this webinar, and I hope it was useful. You can always email us. You can drop an email to me or Swapnil, and we'll be happy to answer any questions you might have. And we'll also be sending, we'll also have a webinar replay in case you want to share it with your team, or pass it along to your friends. So thanks again, and we'll keep you posted on our next webinar. Stay safe, stay home, stay healthy. All right, take care.